I want to share what we've come to affectionately know as Michael's tirades. So, if I may share just a moment with you, sometimes a subject really comes up a lot. And it's coming up in the questions going on the Friday gathering, or it might be Sunday services, or during the munchies, that we're sharing communion in between services or after services. People ask questions, and when I see that coming up a lot, or the question's very pressing, I decide sometimes to address it. Sometimes it becomes today's talk, and sometimes it's just something else. I just want to make a few comments on. So I want to do that today. Some of you, I think, saw the message, my newsletter message of the month, and some of you are probably grateful you didn't. But because I kind of went on to, getting priorities straight in life. And, sometimes I'm very casual about how I say things, and sometimes I'm more direct. This would be one of those more direct messages. But I appreciate those of you who are patient with it and actually get it and say, no, that's right. It's like, call it what it is. And so one of the topics at hand is about spiritual teachers. It's gotten to the point on planet Earth where anybody just decides to call themselves a spiritual teacher, a healer, and whatever. We need to be very careful about this concept. Spiritual teachers. One of the most unique things about Sedona is there's no shortage of healers and teachers. So what made you a healer? What made you a teacher of God, or a spiritual teacher? What made you decide that that's your calling? Well, because I've heard there's money in it. That's not good. Well, my friends did it. Not good. It needs to be your path. It needs to be who you are. And if it's not who you are, don't waste time doing it. Do what you really are. Not because this looks good or looks appetizing, but when it's really you, So we get a bit of that. And one of the strange things about the so-called teachers here in Sedona is they're supposed to be, if we're going to call ourselves a parent, then we should really live up to that role, right? As a good parent, a good model of that. It's no different for spiritual teachers. And I notice I come here and the teachers find themselves more competitive with each other, because there's got to be some tourists coming today and they're going to get them as the students instead of me. And so they do this weird thing. And a lot of these folks, one of the first things they disliked about me was, that their students are saying, well, there's something different here at Unity of Sedona or with Michael. And I'm not trying to be better, but what I'm saying is we have to decide to live up to this stuff. And the idea of competing, and some of these teachers, they're like, their students are saying there's something different, and then they start to feel threatened, and then they start to get weird energy and so on with me. So one of the things they didn't like is their students seeing that difference. And then this includes you guys. So just imagine saying to yourself, we all are being called to be something different. We're not here just to be another spiritual leader, spiritual teacher, author, whatever it happens to be. But I'm the type to say, let's call things for what they really are. If I'm going to be a spiritual teacher, I kind of have to live up to that. Well, other people are going, no, you don't. Look at us. And these people, when I get here, they actually don't call each other on stuff. Because one of them saying, I'll make a deal with you. You don't call me on my misbehavings, and I won't call you on yours. And you know what they call it? Being loving and tolerant and forgiving. And it isn't. It's not. It's off. And I don't personally care. I don't track them all down and try to convert them, because then I would be not, who I am. I'd be a fundamentalist of some kind. Emphasis on the word mental. But fundamentalist, okay, never mind. But such teachers are what the Bible referred to as lukewarm. See, they're just lukewarm, meaning they're pretending to be one thing, but they're really another. They're not committed one way or the other. I'm saying you and I, be careful. Be careful not to make gurus out of authors. It's okay to be an author, but call yourself what you are. If you're an author, your most important goal is to sell books. If you're a spiritual teacher, you could write, but your first important thing to your soul is the teaching. Is there anything wrong with being an author? Not at all. But don't call yourself the equivalent of Buddha or Jesus, because you're not committed to transforming the earth. You're committed to selling books. I write books. I'm not shaming the idea, but I'm clear that I'm first a teacher. I'm first a teacher. If somehow the whole industry fell apart and the world fell apart and, computers and all, and I couldn't write another book or books couldn't be sold anymore, I'm still going to be here teaching. So when we decide to follow someone and be part of a school or a system or a group or a learning, please at least choose to learn from teachers rather than calling your authors something. Because when those authors do something naughty, it breaks your heart. But why is it? They're just authors. They never told you they were more, or shouldn't have been telling you they were more. We really need to call things for what they are. I've been around and worked with closely the biggest teachers in the world and the people you guys love. And some of them are incredible integrities. And others, they have nothing to do with the word integrity. I've been around one that was like, one of their biggest buzz phrases was that they were all about peace. And I've never known a spiritual teacher to create more conflict. Everywhere this person went, they created conflict, abuses of different kinds and usury of different kinds and so on. So what are you about and what do you want to learn from? An author, just a guy that writes books, or a spiritual teacher? There's a difference. And if we don't know how to see the difference, we're not going to be able to expect the teachers to be able to, to reflect it. We've got to ask for that. I want a spiritual teacher. Then what is the spiritual teacher? They need to live up to that. This is a constant thing for me, to watch myself, to observe myself and make sure I'm living up to that. But then are you living up to yourself being on the spiritual path? If people were to ask you, what's Michael all about? Does he think he's the Christ, with the long hair and the beardish kind of thing? No, he doesn't think he's the Christ. He's kind of a bit Christy. That's all. I'm a bit Christy. I like that. I like the Christ energy. I like the Christ. That's not why I grew my hair out. I just grew it. That's all. It's the same as anything else. I'm not in the mood to get it cut more often. That's all. It's not like, oh, this looks cool. It just is what it is. So what are you then? Who are you? What are you about? And my recommendation is to decide, what is it you're here to learn? Not just I'm here to learn. Start deciding and discerning your focus. Because when you decide your focus as students, the path becomes much more clear and far faster track into enlightenment. If you're just kind of hedging and non-committal about what you want to learn, that's what you'll get back. And my recommendation is go for the Christ energy. Go for the Christ consciousness. Don't settle. And I'm not saying you don't study Buddhism and everything else. And when I say Christ, I don't mean Jesus and Christianity. I'm just saying the consciousness of the I am. Even Ashtar, a being of an ascended channeled energy, even Ashtar says, I'm here to serve the master of masters, the Christ. See, even higher dimensional beings understand that. So you'll hear me teach about family and parenting and relationships and sensualities and life and all kinds of stuff. But underneath it all, there's a common theme. And I have no apologies for it. There's a common theme, and it's the Christ as a consciousness. That's where we're going. I could talk about parenting, but it's still going to be about Christ as a consciousness. Is that making sense? And does that come across in what I do? Whatever topic I'm on, does that seem consistent? Yes. So the theme is like that sign up there. God is, I am, we are. And so let's live that. So what would happen, all of a sudden if we start to say, I'm going to say no. I'm a spiritual teacher, or your spiritual teachers, or you. I'm going to say no to some of the things that spiritual teachers do. I'm going to actually care about my students and clients. Not, well, thank you very much. It's another $100. Goodbye. I actually care. And you know what? Let me know if you struggle anymore. Let me know if I can help. See, actually caring. What if you're one that doesn't overcharge? Honestly, what if you're a spiritual teacher? Can you say, well, I'm not going to be one of those. I want this to be affordable. I want this to be reachable to people. What if you make yourself as available as possible? Is that making sense, guys? I hope you understand the contrast of what's brought to the world and what I'm asking us to try to do, to be different. What if we're not being hypocritical in our own lives? Because it does happen. The knock on the door to the back room of the church, you're on in 5 minutes. Okay, man, and, slap down and, knock down another beer, and not let anybody know that you're, full blown out of it, I've seen this. I've seen some of the biggest teachers where I've actually had to help them, because I was backstage, help them get up to the stage because they were too drunk. Yeah, and I'm talking about some of the biggest speakers. I've seen this and had to deal with that before, and try to help them and a little almost cover for them because I'm feeling kind of bad for them and the students that are all in the audience because it's their turn to speak. This stuff happens. But there's a part of me that's being honest with you today to say, why? Why does that have to happen? Well, teachers are human too. Then call yourself something else. Because you're representing God, man. You're representing God. Well, Michael, once again, taking things too seriously, perhaps. And I'd rather die taking things that seriously to where we stop misrepresenting Spirit because of our own needs and greeds. So to me, I'd like to see spiritual teachers that don't hit on their students all the time or take advantage of things all the time. And there's lessons in learning. And as I'm coming to a close on this, there's times when I've had my own learning and lessons about this because there was no textbook on how to do this. I literally remember in the early years being young enough and speaking at a conference where I was wondering, how some things are done. And I watched the elder speakers to see what they do. And I remember watching one. And you have to imagine me being in that real childlike mind that I can often be in. And I walked into an elevator and I stood and watched one particular teacher that you all know, but he's been teaching a long, long time. And I watched how he got in the elevator and he was with a girl. And at another conference, he was with a different girl. And I realized one way that we date, us spiritual teachers, is to have a different person everywhere we go. And I thought, okay, because I'm watching as a child going, how are we supposed to live romantically? So I'm standing back watching and I'm going, oh, is that what we're supposed to do? And then I thought, that doesn't really work for me, for my own reasons. It's not good or bad, but you see what I'm saying? I'm watching and I'm learning through observation. That's how I learned to do this. And a big author had me recently on a radio show, another author, and they said, Michael, and they made a joke openly on the air. They said, it's a funny thing. I've been teaching for years and I still can't get the relationship thing down. And I said to this person, I said, you know what? That's totally understandable, brother, because there's no textbook on that other than our soul's conscience. So we have to go inside and figure, is it okay for spiritual teachers to date? Yes, but watch yourself and see if you're a little out of control. So I ask us to all consider this, to put this all into practical application. What if any of you, to me, I would like to be the athlete that isn't on steroids beating up his wife or girlfriend. I mean, why do you have to be an athlete and that be okay? Look at some of the interviews with these people. And they're saying, yeah, well, sometimes he beats up his wife. But he's a real motivated kind of guy, high energy. And they use that as an excuse. And I'm like, no, put me in charge. Put me in charge of the NFL. Put me in charge. First thing I would do is take away all rings and trophies from people that are on steroids to win something, because it isn't you that won. Second thing, beat your wife, you're gone. You're not warned, you're gone. Because there's people watching and they're learning from this. Kids are learning from this. Stop. So what if we're different, guys? What if we all, I'm not going to be like your conscience and watching over, and you don't have to feel embarrassed if you see me on the street going, he's probably watching. It's not like I'm saying I care or I judge you. I'm just saying, why don't we try something different? Try to be the teacher that isn't out for money. Try to be the athlete that isn't, on steroids or whatever it happens to be. So what if we ask ourselves this question? Can I live in such a way as to not create doubts in people? Think about this. Can you live in such a way as to not create doubts? Because you're spiritual, and people at work know you're into spirituality. So that means, to a degree, you guys are spiritual teachers. You are a representative of God. Can you do it without creating doubt in people when they go, oh yeah, well, they claim to be spiritual, but can you try to not give them that little extra doubt and question? So it becomes a self-observation. Can you be a parent that instead of somebody watching you going, God, I'm glad I didn't have kids, could you be a parent that would make people only think that it would be only a wonderful thing? Think about it. What if we start to live to a different level of being representatives of God on earth, of goodness, or whatever it happens to be? Being different. Can I be that different? So my suggestion is just to think about this. And I say this because I watch the world. That's how a lot of how I learned and learn still. I watch the world and I say, why? Why does that athlete do that? Well, he's on the drugs affect him, but why does he do those? Because that's what makes him a better athlete. Why, guys? Why? Why do you have to, no offense, why do you have to have coffee to wake up? Can't you just want to? Wake up? Can't you just have a life that, does a kid go, oh, it's Christmas, I probably got a lot of gifts out there, but I've got to first have my coffee. There's no way I can enjoy those gifts until I have my coffee. Kids don't do that. So what happened to us? What's gone wrong, guys? Something's off. So I'm just saying, man, I see this and I'm asking, can we do it differently? Can we just be excited to be awake and to be alive? Is it possible? Can we be a parent that makes people see parenting can be an amazing experience rather than, oh, God? Can we evoke excitement and goodness in people? And if we're the spiritual teachers that teach, and then we find out, because it happens. Somebody could probably come up with some naughty story about me, but my intentions are not to be that way. We all slip. I could tell you real quick, one time I was at a conference, and these two gals approached me, and they said, because again, I'm sometimes a bit naive and so on. It's just the way it is. But these two gals approached me and they said, can we sit with you during break? There was like an hour or two break and talk to you. Of course, because we should make ourselves available. Sure, how can I help? And they asked me to go and sit out off to the side somewhere on a patio. And so they're talking to me. Well, they said, can we get you something to drink? Because it was real hot and all, and it was the end of the day. Yeah, absolutely. So they got me a soda and I just gulped it down. And I thought, that was odd. It must have been diet. I think it's diet soda because it was not normal. And then I'm like, what? Yeah, right. They drugged me. Now, what's amazing is a couple of other gals who know how dumb I can be overheard these girls saying, can we talk to you? And they sensed something. So these other couple of girls, they came over and sat in the patio with us. And the other girls were like, excuse me, we want to talk to Michael alone. They said no. And I'm like, I'm just observing this whole experience and something was off. So these gals did this and, so if somebody recorded that, they could say, oh, man, Michael went off with these girls. And that's not really what happened, but it could be observed that way. And I've had experiences like that. And ever since I was a married young guy, my wife at the time, she'd say, do you not realize that person's interested in you? Get out. And lastly, there's a time when gal came up, she wants to talk to me, and she said, this is my room key, and she sets it down. And I thought she was just saying, remind me to get that when I leave. I swear to God. So she leaves, I'm like, oh, geez, she asked me to, So I took it and left it at the front desk and said, the gal left her room key. They're like, yeah. And why are you here? And so sometimes my greatest lessons have been when I was, too dumb to see. But I have a choice to make. I think to myself, but do I want to be the type to have to always be worried and afraid of what people's intentions are? So if I have to sometimes have a slip and a lesson like that, I'd rather that than being the type to go, watch out. Everybody's always out to, I don't want to be that type. So I'm not encouraging everybody to be paranoid and such, but I am asking, can we all try to be different? Can you be the one person at work that doesn't talk about or hate your boss? Just try it. Can you be the athlete that doesn't do such and such? Can you be the parent? Can we be different? And in that, I'm not saying be special, better than. I'm just talking about to thine own spiritual self be true. Holding a presence. And closing, what the Course would tell you is teach only love, and you're always teaching. You're always teaching. And every time you take advantage of somebody, take that room key, go take advantage of the moment. And the few times in my life when I've even slipped and done things like that, it was hard to live with myself. So can we have such an integrity that we do things different? Because you're always teaching. But what are you teaching? How to take advantage? How you can charge a little more? Some of my clients are celebrities who I know they've got money. Let me just add a 0 to my hourly rates. No, I don't. I won't. They get confused by it. Then let them be confused. I tell them I'm going to charge you the same as I would anybody else. Not taking advantage. That's a really fun way to confuse people, is when you're so good, they can't get it. And it's kind of cool because with time, they will integrate that. I hope that all made sense.